I could see nothing but darkness, as I kept hearing a beeping sound from a distance. Slowly but surely, I could feel my limbs and the constant beeping sound becoming louder and clearer. I opened my eyes again and I was confused. I wasn't feeling like before. I felt strange and was also assaulted by a great pain in my head, like it had been split open. No, I should be dead and not in some hospital recovering. Immediately, I noticed the beeping sound was coming from a machine which monitored my vitals, as weird wires were taped from my body to these machines. I was laying in bed with lightweight blankets and sheets, hooked up to and had a fluid drainage tube inserted in my chest. It hurt to breathe and move. The room was ventilated, but the air felt stale as I smelt its antiseptics, a little bitter, with undertones of the artificial fragrance contained in soaps and cleaners. Honestly, I did not need anyone to tell me that I was in a hospital, because that much was clear and quite reasonable, considering what just happened to me. A young lady wearing a white uniform came into my room. I knew she was a nurse due to her obvious uniform, as she checked my vitals while also doing whatever the fuck it is nurses do. I tried adjusting to a seated position but was asked not to attempt moving just yet because I was severely wounded and still too weak to move. "Wow, Tom, it's a miracle that you are alive. You must be a fighter," exclaimed the young nurse as she kept writing on her clipboard and going about her nursely business. She had a very soothing voice which could actually help a patient relax as she spoke, or maybe I was still woozy from everything that was happening. I was still observing her when I noticed that she just called me Tom, which was quite strange to me because my name was John. I nevertheless remained silent because I was still very confused and trying to get a grasp on my current condition. I had thought to myself, maybe she just chose to call me Tom as a nickname because she doesn't know my name, as no one in this hospital would actually know my identity, which would have been true, but I remembered that the paramedics knew my name was John. Anyway, I think I'll let it be for now, as it'll just be a pain in the ass to worry about that now. Doctor's POV. Name, Tom Hendricks. Age, 19. Condition, stable. A patient who recently got involved in a terrible car accident which has claimed the life of his immediate family. He was in a car with his parents and younger sibling, of which he was the sole survivor. The police are still in search of any distant family member, and it'll be a while before they find any. His survival is quite strange because he had a few broken bones and torn flesh along with a major head injury, way more than a few bruises and internal bleeding which has been tended to through surgery. I feel pity for him. Losing your family members in an accident of which only you came out alive could drive a person into a deep space of despair and paranoia, also leaving the person traumatized, so I think it's best we don't give him the news about his family yet. But what are we going to tell him when he starts asking about them? I can't really lie to the young lad, now can I? Sometimes I just can't help but hate my job. I do find something strange, he hasn't asked about his family since he woke up. Most people would be stressing and making demands to see their family who was with them during the crash or asked about their well-being, but for some reason he remains calm and haven't said a word since he regained consciousness. I hope he is not suffering from memory loss. Anyway, we'll find out soon enough. I suspect he might be suffering from a medical condition known as traumatic brain injury, TBI, due to the accident. Traumatic brain injury usually results from a violent blow or jolt to the head or body. An object that goes through brain tissue, such as a bullet or shattered piece of skull, also can cause traumatic brain injury. Tom Hendricks POV. The hospital food could compare with the hot lunch I had at my elementary school, dried out, mystery meat, etc. It's a good thing I don't have food sensitivity. The doctor tried not to show it, but I can see it in his eyes that he pities me for some reason which I do not understand. Maybe he knew about my situation, but I feel he's hiding something bigger than that from me, something I should really know. I became a little chatty with the nurse. Turns out her name was Lillian. We just had a few conversations, but I think I could tell she was a good person with a kind heart. Like all nurses are. 65. This was also where things started getting a little bit strange. I was asked by the doctor if I remembered anything from my accident, and I told him I remember being chased by some goons and then getting hit by a truck, but he had looked at me and said that wasn't the case. He said I was in a car with my family during a heavy storm when my dad lost control of the car and drove off a cliff due to the slippery road as he tried avoiding some rocks which had fallen from a hill above. This guy must be screwing with me right now, cause I wasn't in any car with no family, let alone with my mom and pops. I thought to myself. He started asking questions and writing something on his clipboard each time I gave an answer. Even if I didn't give an answer, he'll still write something on it, and this really pissed me off. After this little twisted up exercise, he came to a conclusion and diagnosed me with amnesia and a traumatic brain injury, TBI for short. He told me this is an injury that affects how the brain works. But I was so sure this old geezer must be screwing with me, because I knew exactly what I was saying. 7. Common old man, Stop screwing with me. I haven't seen my mum in ages, I can barely even remember what she looks like. My dad and I were attacked by my uncle while I tried escaping as I was being chased by some of his lackeys, and I was hit by a truck that night attempting to liberate myself from their grasp, so drop this crap, old man, I shouted at the doctor, feeling a lot of frustration and getting really confused right now because nothing seems to make sense since I woke up. Looking at the flower vase next to me, I could see my reflection on it. This can't be happening, this isn't real, maybe I'm still in the waiting room before proceeding to the afterlife, I muttered to myself as I noticed my hair was now a mixed shade of white and black. I asked him why my hair was white and he told me I was born that way, an hereditary feature from my father. And this was where it hit me that I must still be unconscious, because none of this makes any sense, my subconscious must be playing tricks on me. I tried getting up and I was about going into a rampage, wanting to get out of this crazy hospital so I could get some answers, but I just fell to the floor as my legs were still too weak to walk. While on the floor I tried crawling. If my legs won't work, then I'll use my hands. At this point the doctor called for help and about 2 male nurses came over, forcefully picking me up in an attempt to put me back on my bed, but I struggled and kept yelling, "Get your hands off me, you cunts," but all to no avail as I was still too weak to fight back. They gave me a mild sedative, and as I slowly lost consciousness, I kept wondering what the fuck was going on. I could feel the lights go out slowly and peacefully as I felt myself calming down, which was very annoying because no one had given me any answer. Doctor's POV. Tom's TBI is more severe than I expected. Psychiatric issues, including hallucinations and delusions, are certainly more common after traumatic brain injury. The risk for new onset of psychiatric illness after a brain injury goes on for a long time and can be seen with any severity of traumatic brain injury. Some medications can increase confusion or cause hallucination or delusions. Stimulant medications such as Ritalin, Adderall, and amantadine all have this potential side effect. Evaluation should also be done to ensure these symptoms are not related to seizures. 5. I really hope this doesn't cause permanent damage to his brain, for I'd really like to help him out and assist him in finding closure over the death of his family. Tom was placed on sedatives for a week to help him heal and not strain his near-damaged brain with stress and excessive thoughts or sudden aggressive behaviors like he had displayed. Waking up a few days after sedation, Tom realized that he had to take things slow and try to understand what was actually going on here and why it seemed as if he's been whooped out of reality and into another, filled with a bunch of craziness. Turning to his left, he sees the nurse, Lillian, replacing the withered flowers in the vase with some fresh orchids and calls out to her. He had asked her if there's been word concerning his dad's murder and whether his traitor of an uncle had been caught, but the reply she gave him was both heartbreaking and confusing, as it seems everyone keeps sticking to that same obnoxious story which makes him not only look crazy, but sound crazy too. She said to him sourly that she doesn't have any knowledge concerning his uncle or any other relatives, but his parents and younger sibling died in the crash and he was the only survivor. Don't stress your brain too much trying to remember what exactly happened, it'll only worsen your head injury and amnesia too, said the nurse in a worried tone and having a pitiable expression on her face, as she described him looking down and placing a hand on his head as if in anguish. Tom tried recollecting his thoughts and putting the wild puzzle together, promptly wanting to figure out what in the goddamn world was happening, when the doctor stepped into the patient's room. "Mr. Hendrickson, how are you feeling?" asked the concerned doctor. "Like I was hit by a truck trying to outrun a tornado storm," answered the crude teenager, who finally decided to cooperate as rebelling won't do him any good. The doctor chuckled as he proceeded on to checking Tom's vitals. To the doctor's astonishment, he realized that Tom had been healed up at an incredibly fast pace. The now cooperating patient was taken for an X-ray and it came to light that most of the fractured bones are fairly healed up as they have been coalesced completely, and he was barely in pain, only feeling slight aches around certain areas. Regarding his injuries, they were healed up already, and these revelations had the doctors marveling as they pondered on how such a thing was possible, because it couldn't be explained in medical terms, or even heard of in the medical field. It can only be explained if Tom was a metahuman. They are a race of humans who had evolved or gained special powers, as they appear to be everywhere now, making it seem like the new normal. Dr. Walter, who was the head doctor and who was in charge of the patient, was actually Tom's family's doctor, of which he'll know if Tom was a metahuman. Dr. Walter advised him to start therapy so he'll be able to recover faster and regain his memories quicker. Tom had previously declined the idea of undertaking therapy, but in order to fully recover and leave the hospital as soon as possible, he decided to take up therapy so he'll be able to investigate and see for himself what was really going on. He felt the people at the hospital were dabbling with him or keeping him from the truth, which had Tom feeling disgusted and spiteful. Immediately he was alone with Dr. Walter without the presence of sight of anyone. Tom asked him the question concerning his family, of which everyone had been giving him a very absurd answer. To his dismay, the doctor explained it all again, relating to the accident of him being in a car crash with his family and being the only survivor. Yeah, like I haven't heard all that before," remarked Tom sarcastically with a displeased look on his face. Still, he found it irritating that everyone was sticking to that story, which infuriated him, as it seems they are all playing some kind of sick game, but he kept trying to shrug it off. Eventually he starts therapy, not for his amnesia, because he knows he doesn't have memory loss, but he agreed to it in order to regain his cognitive skills and muscle memory, so he'll be able to walk and do certain basic things again without trouble or help. The physical examination includes a neurological exam to check reflexes, sensory function, balance, and other physiological aspects of the brain and nervous system. Imaging testing was something the doctor did too, which included an MRI and CT scan to check for brain damage or abnormalities. Blood tests were carried out too, to check for infections and nutritional deficiencies or other issues. An electroencephalogram to check for the presence of seizure activity. All precautions were taken to ensure he doesn't have brain damage. This therapy took a whole week to be completed, and for his limbs, which were finally feeling like his again, to regain their cognitive skills. Now he could walk and run without the help of a crutch or the assistance of a nurse, and is basically fully recovered. But the doctors still wanted to examine him a while longer just to be assured he's ready to face the world again. As for his amnesia, the doctor thought it best he goes HME, reunites with friends, and being surrounded by familiar things might jerk back his memories. Living with amnesia can be frustrating for those with memory loss, and for their family and friends, too. People with more severe forms of amnesia may require direct assistance from friends or professional caregivers. The doctor said as he advised Tom to accept extra help, of which he fiercely refuses to get. It can be helpful to talk with others who understand what you're going through, and who may be able to provide advice or tips on living with amnesia. Advised the doctor, who's still pressing on, hoping he'll change his mind about it. Tom agreed to join a support group and was given a membership card to one nearby. PSH. Like I'd join a group filled with fucked up personals who just keep sharing stories of their pathetic lives and forming a community of messed up people. I just agreed with Dr. Walter, so he'll drop the topic and I'll be able to leave the hospital as soon as I can. Finally, Tom was to be discharged the next day. After his daily therapy session, he had nothing else doing, which had him lazing around and laying on the bed for the rest of the day watching TV while also reading some magazines he found on the small table in his hospital room. While watching a TV program, he then decides to check the news channel to see if anything relating to the night of his accident and his dad's murder or uncle's takeover of their company would be announced on the news, but instead it was news about a bank robbery. Looking closely at the news report and footage of the incident being played on screen, he saw a young lad in yellow and red costume with a lightning bolt drawn in the emblem on his chest, which had him looking like a superhero. The young male was moving just like a speedster as he completely dominated and apprehended the armed robbers. After the footage, he was then interviewed by the press, where he gave a statement telling the people of Central City that he loves them and would work harder to keep them safe. Immediately after the interview, he said with a smile on his face, "Go to run," before zapping away and drawing a flaming lightning bolt on the ground, which was the same as the one in the emblem on his chest, while the crowd cheered in adoration for him. "Motherfucker," exclaimed Tom with his jaw dropping as his eyes widened with surprise and his gaze flickered with shock as he kept staring at the TV screen. Nah, there's only so much crazy a man can take right now. What the fuck is going on here?" remarked Tom without a visible change in his facial expression. At first he thought maybe they were actors, but watching the speedster move was just too realistic to have been edited, and the actual panic of the hostages due to the gunshots and captivity was just too real. Also, what purpose would it serve the news if they reported fake news with edited footage? He averted his eyes to the news headline on the screen and saw the caption, "Bank robbery hindered and 25 hostages rescued," all done by the superhero known as Kid Flash. He had read comics and watched movies, cartoons even, about the Flash series, and knew very well that the superhero on the screen was actually Kid Flash. Tom's best friend and roommate, Alex, was a huge DC geek who had their dorm room filled with posters of DC superheroes, the Justice League mainly. Even made him watch cartoons and read comics about the DC verse, but he didn't pay any mind to them, as he found them to be distractions, and he couldn't let fictions interrupt him from attaining or losing sight of his goal, which was surpassing his dad, academically and in all aspects. "He said Central City," muttered the confused Tom as he looked closely again at the news headlines. He then realized eminently that the incident was taking place at Central City. As he recalled from the comics, Central City was the home and territory of the Flash and Kid Flash, which was a far cry from home. No, not home, from his own universe entirely, as Central City doesn't even exist where he's from. Tom called for a nurse and asked if what the news was talking about actually took place or was just an act, and she confirmed it to be true, saying the Flash, Kid Flash, and most of the superheroes in the city keeps them safe from supervillains and metahumans threats. Superheroes? Metahumans? Is someone up there fucking with me right now? Tom was downright flabbergasted at the revelations. To break the iceberg, he asked what city was this particular hospital located, and the answer he got was something which attested to the thought he had been wishing wasn't true. It actually seemed impossible. Other headlines were of the masked hero also known as the Green Arrow, who violently apprehended some criminals in Star City. Also of the Riddler, who was captured in Gotham and handed over to the chief of police by the Dark Knight vigilante also known as the Batman. Tom kept seeing news reports about the activities of different Justice League members and other superheroes foiling the plans of villains and apprehending criminals, making the job easier for the police as most of them were actually supervillains whom mere bullets won't make a dent on them. This was a huge pill to swallow. He had read fictional comics of being transported or reincarnated in another world. He also watched anime series where the main character was reincarnated in another world, or as they call it, isekai. His dad had them all confiscated, of course, saying he should focus more on his studies and pay no mind to these fictional nonsense which he devoted his time to. Tom came to the realization that he might have died from the accident, and being as his doppelganger also died here too, a supernatural being up there must have transmigrated his soul to this universe. So of all the known and unknown universe, I just happened to be reincarnated in this fucked up one in particular where shit just happens, the DC verse. Yeah, fuck this shit. I'm out. 1. Sniffs. Ha. Just another day in the trenches. Nah, I'm just kidding, I am still at the hospital, but there's something different about today. My time in therapy was a whole lot of crap. The nurses kept praising me with smiles on their faces each time I took a step while leaning on the wooden bars as support, treating me like a toddler who'd just started learning to walk and bribing the poor child with lollipops if it could walk up to the destined point. Sigh. Yes, their smiles served as a motivation to do better, but I was a bit recessive. I couldn't bear it anymore. I know this will be my last session, but the hospital's air was kind of sickening. I need some fresh air and a hearty meal as soon as I can. Okay, that's enough for today, I heard the voice of the fitness nurse director, which snapped me out from my thoughts. Swiveling to my left, I saw my nurse, Lillian, standing by the door with a small smile on her face before she told me to freshen up and gave me the good news that I'll be discharged soon. About time. One thing I know about the DC verse is that it's a place where shit just happens. 1 minute you could be going on about your normal day and the next, boom, a villain could just pop out of nowhere and run your fade. Too bad I just happened to wake up in a universe filled with people who sees it as a normal thing around here. Luckily there are people who call themselves heroes and are willing to stop such villains. I was never an avid fan of heroes and heroic fictional works in my previous life, but if I was, I'll say The Flash would have been my favorite. I remember watching the DCW Flash series. Yeah, I watched that and I swear that boy experienced more pain than most DC heroes I knew of. 36. This guy's mom was killed by the Reverse Flash, DC's most notorious op, and his dad sent to jail for her murder while he was a kid. After spending years in jail, his dad was finally released when he was proven innocent and then killed in front of his very own eyes by Zoom. Damn, ain't that just diabolical? Anyway, the hour had eventually come and I was discharged immediately after signing the discharge papers. I hitched a ride home with Dr. Walter, who offered to be of help to me in any way he could. He also told me about my family's lawyer, who will be paying me a visit in a few hours, telling me I just have to sign some documents so my family's inheritance will be mine. From the looks of it, that won't be much, as the house seemed like a normal home unlike my actual dad's mansion in my previous world. It turns out that this dad isn't as rich as he was in my previous world. On seeing the family photos and portraits on the wall, I muttered to myself, they must have been one hell of a happy family. Growl. A sound coming from my stomach accompanied with slight vibrations, signaling me to pay my dues. It's been a while I felt this sensation. I've almost forgotten what it felt like to be hungry. I walked up to the fridge and, God, I almost puked whatever remains were in my belly from the hospital. The groceries had gone bad, like really bad, and now I have to clean it up. Sigh. 4 hours later. I had finished cleaning. Finally. I sighed with relief as I sank into my black cozy couch. Who knew cleaning could be so much of a drag? Being a rich kid in my previous life, we had cleaners and I saw it as a lazy job that just had to be done, but no, if I could go back, I'll definitely give the maids and gardeners a raise. I know I should be resting, being that I just arrived from the hospital, but I feel completely fine. I can't just lay here in sweats, I have to freshen up. Ding dong. The doorbell rang immediately as I got out of my chill and refreshing bath. "Who's there?" I asked while spying through the peephole on the door as I saw a man wearing a gray suit with black tie, holding a briefcase. He identified himself as our family's lawyer. "Right. Doc told me to expect his arrival." I thought. I didn't have much dealings with lawyers in my past life, but I knew what to expect and watch out for. After carefully reading the documents he brought along with him, I signed them and my family's inheritance is now mine. The bank accounts of my parents and siblings will be closed and the money sent to my account. Meaning I have enough to live by for a while, but I'd ultimately need to get a source of income. "Okay, it's all done. Remember to call me if you need my assistance with anything," said my lawyer as he extended his hand to give me his card, escorted by a handshake, before taking his leave. Growl. Fuck, I almost forgot I was hungry. I was exhausted, famished and dehydrated, but I decided to just wing it, coming to the conclusion that I needed to grab a bite, and I big one at that. During my trip from the hospital, Walter drove past an eatery called Big Belly Burger. Don't get me wrong, but the name of that restaurant and the thought of such burgers along with fries and a chilled milkshake had my mouth watering and salivating to this delicacy. I needed a change of clothes, which led me to my doppelganger's wardrobe, and yeah, I gotta say I was impressed. It seems we've got style and a good fashion sense no matter the universe we are located in. I threw on a black jean followed by a gray hoodie against the chilly evening, then topped the outfit with some basic Vans. Taking my wallet containing my credit card as I ventured into the night, boarding a taxi which took me to an ATM near the restaurant. Turns out my PIN was the last digits of my dad's contact line over here, typical me. I entered the restaurant, walking directly to the counter to place my order as I observed everyone. Don't know what I was expecting, but everyone on here looked normal boring. Maybe I'm the one who looks like the villain? I whispered to myself. A chuckle from the girl at counter drew my attention, making me turn to look at her, lifting a brow as I noticed she was giving me an apologetic look yet was trying to stop herself from laughing with a hand across her mouth. I wondered why she laughed, so I just had to ask the question. Excuse me, miss. Do I have something on my face that has you laughing?" "Nothing, sir. I just happened to overhear you, also your hair dye is catching." "Oh, okay," I answered with a more relaxed expression on my face, but still did not bother correcting her about the second part of sentence. "Can I take your order?" she asked with a smile on her face. I placed my order, then took a seat at a far end corner of the restaurant. After a short while my order was brought to my table, a Big Belly burger with fries accompanied by a chill milkshake to wash it all down. This meal has me salivating, well time to dig in. I savored every bite as compared to my previous life. My dad rebuked me from eating such meals. Oh, all the things I missed out on just for an inane body and mental health. Well, being as it may, I've started a new life and I'm going to enjoy every bit of it. A life filled with excitement and thrills. It would be like my very own reality TV, watching heroes and villains go to Slam Town. A life where I'd feel the kind of adrenaline rush I've never felt before, all while staying away from unnecessary stress and commitments. 3. Looking at the TV screen, it came to my notice that there was news about the Joker escaping from Arkham Asylum and also news about a very expensive diamond stolen from a museum without any trace or evidence except frozen lasers and frozen locks with the ice reading at a temperature of absolute zero. 26. I didn't need anyone's help before figuring out that it was the work of Captain Cold, and thank God I wasn't in Gotham. The Joker is way too scary and unpredictable to be in the same city with. Who knows? He might just wake up one morning and say to himself while having a psychotic look in his eyes, "Oh, I think I'll spray everyone in Gotham with my Joker gas so everyone would look just like me. No thanks, I don't want to be around an unstable lunatic." I blame Batman though. He knows the Joker will always escape and yet he still decides to take him to the same prison he just broke out from. It's like they are playing some sick game of tag. Maybe I'll visit Gotham soon, I might find something amusing over there. Who knows what the future has in store for me over here. Standing up, I signaled the waitress and paid for my meal as I took my leave. While embarking on a taxi, I realized something that hadn't fully registered in my head since I got home. It's just me, no parents, no siblings, no annoying commitments, and if I walk past anyone I'm supposed to know but don't, they'll just take it to be amnesia. I'd really like to live a very calm and normal life over here because I don't have any responsibilities, I don't have anyone trying to impress or surpass. It's just me, myself and I, so I am going to live life for myself without being bothered by others. I undeniably need to start going to a gym over here too. God knows I can't bear the sight of this pathetic body structure. It seems staying at the hospital for a while really does a number on one's muscles. One good thing is, I just happen to live in Central City where everything it's all rainbows and sunshine, where the villains have cute nicknames and lack actual bloodlust or have a raging boner for the resident speedsters. Even if they cook up something to kill civilians, eventually they'll be stopped and sent to Iron Heights by the Flash. Upon arrival at my doorstep, there's one thing I'm still pondering on even while still on the taxi, which was what DC verse in particular am I currently residing so I'd know just how fucked I actually am. The ringing of an alarm clock filled the air as it indicated the beginning of a brand new day. Tom opened his eyes and stared ahead at the ceiling for a few seconds before turning off the alarm ringing at his bedside. He got up from his bed and then sauntered to the window to open the curtains, letting daylight flicker into his room. The next routine was the one that led him to the bathroom, taking a cold shower immediately after brushing his mouth. After freshening up, he went to the kitchen to prepare breakfast. A simple breakfast of toast and orange juice with fried eggs. A healthy breakfast to start up his day had been his routine for the past few days. Over the course of the past days, he had received calls from different people sending their condolences to him regarding the tragic death of his parents and sibling. He received calls from family members and family friends, relatives, even friends from college called him. Obviously he had no recollection of any of them, so they took it that his amnesia was making it difficult for him to remember them. This had everyone introducing themselves to him and not putting him in an awkward position when they called. Many wanted to check up on him but he refused their offer and told them he was doing fine and just putting the pieces together and would heal on his own time. Half of those calls were him just lying through his teeth to reduce the cringe he felt every time someone he was supposed to know called and he had to explain his predicament. Hopefully his predecessor didn't have any ongoing current relationship with a girl because that was a conversation he didn't want to have anytime soon. Awkward would have been an understatement. Tom's grandparents had called and wanted him to stay with them for a while. Yet again he declined their offer and even stopped them from coming to visit him until the funeral. He was very calm and compassionate when talking with his grandparents because he knew a little of how terrible they would have been feeling at the moment. He spent over an hour comforting them on the phone, reassuring them that he was okay, a little bit shaken, but okay. Preparations for the funeral of his parents and younger sibling are in the works. Turned out his predecessor was still in college and he'll have to continue in order for him to adjust and settle into his new normal. Ring. A ringing sound came from his phone while he was still having breakfast. Grabbing the device, he flashed a glance at the highlighted screen to see who was calling. Hopefully not a family member. Fortunately, it was a reminder placed on that date to remind him of his doctor's appointment. Crap, I totally forgot about these boring sessions with the doctor. Tom let out a sigh of exhaustion at the reminder. His appointment with the doctor will be the last one till further notice. The doctor usually checks for any mental damages and tries to help him with his amnesia. Tom finished up breakfast and decided to watch TV a bit before heading out. Each time he turned on the TV, it's usually about heroes and villains. Crime rate just kept rising even with the presence of heroes. He took a sit and let himself sink comfortably into his cozy couch, reached for the remote and turned on the TV. He kept scrolling and switching from channel to channel, unable to find anything he found entertaining. He then turned off the TV and just decided to go for his doctor's appointment instead. Tom got up from his couch and walked in a direction leading to his room up the stairs. He goes to his wardrobe in search of an outfit that suited his taste. The wardrobe was filled with dark-colored clothes, which is actually his style of clothing. He picked up an ash gray form-fitting turtleneck sweatshirt and complemented it with a dark blue jean trousers. Wearing a coat over the sweatshirt because of how chill the outside was, he grabbed a white beanie and a pair of shoes and left the house. Walking into the hospital, right away his nose flared with harsh yet common smell of the institution. The high concentration of antiseptic, a little bitter, with undertones of the artificial fragrance contained in soaps and cleaners filled the air. A scent so familiar that it reminded him of his first day at the hospital, the day he woke up in this verse. Taking the elevator which led to the doctor's office, Tom stumbled into a familiar person. It was the same nurse who was in charge of his daily checkups during his time at the hospital. "Look at you, you are looking much better than you did a month ago," the familiar nurse said with a stunned expression on her face. "I don't only look better, but I feel better too." He looked at her with an unreadable expression on his face, almost as if he was totally unfazed by her enthusiasm to see him. He always had a problem with the bubbly type. "Come on now, don't hit me with that cold gaze of yours. It's nice seeing you again even though you don't feel the same," she said so with a smile, ignoring his attitude towards her as she hit his shoulder with a teasing punch. "I'll admit that it's nice seeing you haven't changed a bit. You are as enthusiastic as ever. There you go, it doesn't hurt to reciprocate the positive energy a person directs at you through a conversation, right?" "Right, but it's still a pain in the ass to pretend like I care about such hyper pleasantries when I find it tiresome. Oh, you really are something else. I hope we get to catch up sometime. I have to attend to a patient right now, bye. She waved him goodbye and hastily walked into the elevator and tapped on the buttons nervously. He watched her till the elevator doors closed and they lost sight of each other. This little encounter cracked a smirk on Tom's face. Her behavior was a bit amusing to him. Now, time to attend to the business of the day. He made his way towards the doctor's office and knocked on the glass door that a Dr. Walter's name was imprinted on it. Come on, Tom, I know it's you. A calm, soft-spoken and familiar voice came from the other side of the door, from within the office. He opened the door and walked into the office, then shut the door close without backing the doctor's desk for even a second. How did you know I was the one at the door? Tom asked his doctor, not with curiosity but amusement in his voice as his brows cocked upwards. There's no one else who knocks on my office door just once and stands there without saying a word or identifying themselves until there's a reply from me. Dr. Walter said this with an expression of self-assurance as if he was stating the obvious with the look on his face as he stared directly at Tom, who was standing directly opposite the doctor's desk, his glancing around the office with his left hand in his pants pocket. Tom shrugged off the doctor's reply as he slumped into a chair near the desk and took a seat, responding to the doctor's hand gesture. Okay, can we just get this over with as soon as we possibly can? This session is starting to feel a little bothersome. Haha, I'm glad that you at least have a sense of humor left. Dr. Walter let out a small laugh before his face turned somber with a hard expression sitting on it as he looked at the young man in front of him. Have you recovered even the slightest piece of memory back since you've been home and surrounded by familiar objects and pictures? Nope, not even the tiniest bit. I'm afraid I would have to diagnose you with retrograde amnesia, as it seems our efforts with retrieving your memories are not producing the desired results. Dr. Walter said this with a sympathetic expression and cursed himself deep down for not being able to help the young man who was the last surviving child of his dear friend. Oh, retrograde amnesia. Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't that a type of amnesia where the chances of a patient recovering their memories are very slim and almost never regain their previous memories? He apprehensively asked the concerned doctor. As much as it pains me to admit, that's correct. I'm very sorry I wasn't able to help you when you needed it the most. That's okay, Doc, I'll just take it as my second chance at life. Not everyone is lucky enough to have one. He had a gratified expression on him as he said this, mainly because with this diagnosis it won't be awkward when he walks by someone he was supposed to recognize or when he does things differently from his predecessor. I have to admit, I'm almost surprised you are taking this news so well, but with that attitude of yours it's difficult imagining you not doing so. Well, what can I say, but that's just me coming to terms and adjusting to my new reality, Tom said with such composure and calmness that would have made Thomas Shelby proud. I heard about the funeral of your parents and siblings taking place this weekend. How are the preparations going? Tom nodded and answered. Honestly, everything concerning the funeral is being handled by my grandparents and a few relatives, who I'll definitely have to meet on that day. I will do my best to be at the funeral, and remember, Tom, I'm here for you if you ever need help with anything. Dr. Walter said this with an assuring tone and without the slightest doubt in his voice. I know, Doc, and thank you. I look forward to seeing you at the funeral. I will be taking my leave now. Tom stood up and shook hands with the doctor before taking his leave. It's been almost a week since the funeral took place. The incoming calls from both friends and relatives for moral support had subsided. Tom sat behind the desk in his dad's study and had been reading different books just to kill time. He had been studying since the night of the funeral, being that there wasn't any other thing of interest for him currently. He had read his predecessor's journal and it turned out he was as normal as your everyday kid. Tom had been reading different books and cultivating his knowledge, a habit he picked up from his previous world. He was a fast reader with an extremely high rate of understanding. He was able to process and analyze information faster than an average teenager. Enough of lazing around and feeding only my brain. It feels like someone stuffed a bag of cotton inside my head, needing to stretch out a bit. Jim? Might as well until I put my head together and burn the piling stress while at it. Tom thought aloud to himself, not feeling comfortable with his current body stature. His appetite had grown a lot due to his body's urgent need for its lost nutrients. Right now Tom's current frame was still looking scrawny due to his long stay at the hospital and nothing like the compact body of an average young adult. And there was also no need to get a job right now because he had enough money to take care of himself for a while, but he might need to find one later down the line for a constant flow of income. It's been a week already, and though Tom had started out first with registering himself at a local gym nearby, mainly because he only had a set newbie dumbbells at home, he still didn't put in the hours, only going for a few days through the week. The reason he even entertained going to the gym was just because of his stiff movements and the mild aches he suffered when he did something tasking that stretched his muscles, like the time he cleaned the entire house immediately after he was discharged from the hospital. He had been left gasping for air as he slouched on a couch after he was done with just the living room, his waist hurting like hell because of the heavy lifting and bending he had to do. After he got his labored breaths in order, he moved on to the kitchen, slowing down his pace in order not to exhaust himself as he cleaned all the dusty utensils and cupboards. He had saved the rooms for last because they were the most dirty and in need of a thorough cleaning. The first room he cleaned was that of his parents. It wasn't that messy but was dusty and had a stuffy atmosphere due to the lack of fresh air and sunlight. He had started up the room cleaning by opening the windows and let in the much needed fresh air along with sunlight. While in the process of cleaning, he found a family album containing pictures of what a person might call a beautiful family. What had happened to them was quite unfortunate because they looked really happy. Not that he was complaining, because that incident led to him getting a second chance at life. After he had finished up with his parents' room, he proceeded to his brother's, and the room was as childish as it could get. The kid had action figures of heroes on his dusty shelf. It wasn't stuffy unlike that of his parents. Turns out he left his windows open with curtains slightly closed but enough for sunlight to get in. The walls were covered in posters of The Flash like he was a hardcore fan, but one notable picture frame was on his desk. It was a picture which had his family in it, with him having the biggest smile, like it was a very memorable moment for him. When he was done cleaning the room, a mischievous smile slowly cracked along his lips like he suddenly had a very pleasing idea. He had noticed just how spacious that room actually was, and the idea Tom had at that moment while glancing around the room was to transform it into his personal gaming room. Boys do love their video games. He proceeded to the next room immediately, and he was done with his little brother's own. The next room was that of his predecessors, which was now his. At first it seemed like the room of an average teenager, but it was dusty and stuffy as hell. A skateboard which had a very slick design was resting in a corner of the room. There weren't any posters of heroes or even a family picture found in the room. The only notable thing in the room was the amount of books located on his bookshelf. The books weren't comics or literature, they were sophisticated and could only be understood by someone with actual knowledge who studies extensively. Turns out the Arctic was located above his room and it definitely needed to be cleaned. But it wasn't anything like he had expected. It had been transformed to a personal library. The Arctic had a bookshelf which held books on a few advanced subjects. Tom was quite intelligent in his previous life, but not quite on the same level when compared to that of his predecessors. He didn't look like a nerd in the pictures Tom had seen, only that the books he read were on par with those that people going to their doctorates read. The dude had most likely cleared most, if not all, of his college-recommended textbooks. When he was done with his room, he went straight for the bathroom as it was the next place in need of cleaning. Immediately he was done cleaning the house, he started rearranging the settings to his liking. The original settings of the living room had the TV positioned at the middle of the far end wall and surrounded by chairs. A small table stood on the fancy rug at the center of the living room. He then moved the necessary furniture to his preferred spots. The TV was placed in a location which gave him a visible view of the door. This verse is occupied by lunatics, and who knows when a psychopath might barge into his place. He needed to be prepared to hightail the fuck out at any moment's time, was Tom's thought at the time. The couch he had shifted before and which caused a strain to his lower back needed to be relocated again. It was moved in a position opposite the TV while the small table was placed beside it. The center rug remained at its position. He then removed the withered flowers along with its vase from the dining table and replaced it with a small fruit basket. The house then looked and felt a bit more comfortable to him. He looked at the portraits on the walls, then contemplated whether to keep them in the parents' room or just leave them as they are. Tom thought about this critically before he made the decision to just leave them as they are, in honor to the family he had here and as a constant reminder to do better in his second chance at life. The basement was as basic as it could possibly get. It was more like a storage room used for storing junks they didn't want to dispose of but might need them sometime. Such a manner of thinking didn't sit well with Tom because he believed if something is no longer useful or needed, it might as well be disposed of rather than letting it take up useful space. Luckily it wasn't infested by pests and had very few contents. Plausibly it wasn't a tasking job doing the cleanup. Next up was the only place he hadn't been to yet and was sure it needed to be visited. This was the garage, and it was located by the side of the house. It led unguardedly to the driveway outside, which was utterly visible from the kitchen's window. There wasn't much work needed to be done in the garage, it just needed cleaning since it had been neglected for a while. The cleanup Tom did in the garage was almost as effortless as the one he did in the basement and took less time. When he concluded the house cleaning, he found himself utterly exhausted and his muscles profoundly strained. The work served as a form of exercise for his scrawny muscles due to the amount of time he had spent on the hospital bed. Even the physical therapy sessions he had before full recovery doesn't compare to the task he just finalized. He was drenched in sweat, almost like he had run a marathon. He headed straight to the shower to freshen up before he had his lunch. It was more like breakfast because Tom hadn't eaten a single meal the entire day. That's because he was completely immersed in the work he had rounded up. Comment. After the satisfying meal, he sat on the couch, turned on the TV and slowly scrolled through channels in search of entertainment. As he stared at the TV, the fatigue from the chores slowly caught up with him and he started to nod off. Before he knew it, he had sunk into the couch for a rejuvenating nap which might last till night time. Tom Hendricks POV. A lot of things have happened to me for the past 3 months since I've arrived in the DC universe. While adjusting to my new normal, it still fascinated me each time I saw humans with superpowers. Be it heroes or villains, I enjoyed watching them demonstrate their powers either on the news report on TV or from videos that were captured and posted by civilians who were fortunate enough to witness it live. Some might say it wasn't a fortunate circumstance and call it unfortunate because people might get hurt, or it's a very dangerous and unpredictable situation, blah blah. For me it was exhilarating. Shit happens every day and we might as well get used to it. You either make the most of your situation and move forward or cower in fear and stay stagnant due to terror. As for me, I chose the former and decided on making the most of my second chance at life. I had received an email from an administration at my predecessor's university which demanded I attend a meeting which would decide the fate of my academics, considering I missed an entire semester. Although I only got this offer because they were informed about the accident and were reasonable enough to let me heal, both from the death of my family and from my amnesia. Indeed, I attended the meeting and it so happened to be before the beginning of the new semester. At the meeting the decision they agreed on was for me to repeat the semester, which was basically telling me to stay back a year. Actually I was cool with that decision and I've also been reading at my free time, so I was prepared to resume college. Although this would actually be my second time attending college, I was a graduate in my past world and graduated with a very impressive result, so the only issue I had this time around was that it would be a bother doing it all over again for the second time. Attending lectures was cool and all, but the stares directed towards me by people whom I was supposed to know gave me a feeling of awkwardness and I stared back at them at times in response, so we both had our equal share of that inelegant feeling. I was delighted knowing most of my course mates didn't repeat the year because each time they saw me on campus, they tried exchanging pleasantries with me in hopes of me remembering who they were to me. But unfortunately I don't have those memories and I tried my best to avoid conversations. The workout sessions at the gym proceeded smoothly and got me in good shape, even though I'm not as dedicated to daily workouts like I was in my previous life. The trainer at the gym called out to me during one of the sessions and asked why I always ended up doing only the exact amount of workout required for each exercise and not pushing myself a little further to go above the limit. My response for him had been as blunt as the weight I was lifting. If I wanted to go above the limits I actually could, but I do not wish to do anything that isn't a necessity and I don't have to do. Thrown into amused by the words I gave in response, he responded with a question to satisfy his curiosity. I know that you could do more than you give. Don't you want to achieve buffed up muscles like mine? Why would I want to stress about the build of a bodybuilder, when I am content with my tight and perfectly fit muscles? I was being honest with him. I would not wish to do anything beyond the required amount when I get visible results from the necessitated quantity. After living a life filled with hard work and dedication, I don't want to repeat the same thing at my second chance at it. I want an easygoing life, a relaxed one without much commitments. Atlas I was successful at getting a job after a while of job hunting. I wanted an easygoing one, a chill part-time job which would not cause me any physical or mental strain. So I mostly hunted for jobs as a receptionist, a bartender, even as a barrister. After the long search I finally got a job as a bartender at a bar with a not-so-conspicuous name which was Gary's Pub. The first time I walked into the bar it was so obvious that it was my first time there. The looks and stares directed towards me gave that hint. I ignored the stares and walked straight to the counter as they returned back to their previous activities and paid me no mind. There was something about Tay Bar which I just couldn't put a finger on. I just had the feeling that if I got the job here then my life here would become more intoxicated for some reason. The person who stood behind the counter was a young lady who wore a white shirt, a waistcoat and black skirt. I guess that was the uniform there. After another person wearing similar outfits caught my sight at a far end corner clearing a table filled with empty bottles. I told the lady at the bar counter about my objective and she picked up a telephone then called someone. She told the person that there was someone who wanted a job. Few minutes later a man who seemed to be in his late 40s came down from a stairway around the back. He went behind the counter and asked why I wanted a job there. He looked at me with an expression which plainly said, "Do not fuck with me, kid." A normal person my age would have been intimidated by that look on his face, but I wasn't shaken, not even the slightest bit. It was better to just talk plainly and not beat around the bush as to my reason for wanting to work there. I looked at him with an unfazed expression on my face because I knew a person who easily gets intimidated could never work at a bar. I told him I was in college and wanted a part-time job that would not involve labor as a side hustle. He stared at me for a while before letting out a mild laughter. He looked at me and said, "You got the job, kid. This place isn't a place for pussies and you don't seem like one to me. But do you have any experience with a bar?" I answered frankly, "No sir, but I'm a quick study." "Okay kid, be here tomorrow at 4 p.m. Linda will show you the ropes." When he said the name Linda, he gestured to the young lady behind the counter. And that's how I got the job. I've been working there for almost 3 months now, and one finally got to discover why the bar's atmosphere had me excited. It was because that bar just so happened to be a safe ground away from the horrific crimes which take place at night in that city, a neutral ground where civilians and officers could leave the grudges outside and go in with a hate-free heart while they drink the long day's work stress away. 7. Although no one could tell if they were cops, but I have an eye for recognizing them. The bottom line was that when they come to the bar, they leave their official duties outside and go in for a drink as civilians. The short time that I have worked there, I have seen weirdos sitting and drinking with other weirdos as they bragged about whose day was toughest. There is this excitement I often get when they talk about how fucked up their day was while I serve their drinks. It was like hearing a story from the actual source and not from a third person. For some reason which I don't know, stories hit differently when the teller is drunk. It's definitely because it is the alcohol speaking and pouring out their hearts. I tried not to get too familiar with any of them, considering I don't want any trouble or anything that might get me fired. So I mainly just do what bartenders do, respond to their complaints and be the man they could pour their drunken heart to. After a while adjusting to my new life and daily duties, everything finally felt normal, like the easy life I had always wanted. Where I could just do whatever makes me happy and not bother about living up to anyone's expectations. I got home from work that night at around 10:30 p.m., tossed my cross bag on the couch, then walked straight into the shower for a cold and refreshing bath. Subsequently, I finished my bath, then wore a cozy black robe to keep me warm as I went into the kitchen and prepared warm milk to help me sleep like a baby that night. Thereafter, I sat on the dining table with my laptop placed on the table in front of me and my mug by the side as I took a sip every now and then while I did my research. Apart from my studies at school, I still went ahead and started online courses just for the sake of learning. As I studied and took my online course for the night, I turned to get my notes so I could jot something that intrigued me when my right hand came in contact with my mug and was knocked off the table. "Oh fuck," was my reaction as I extended an arm to catch it, but I couldn't, and this was where things got interesting. Before the mug could make contact with the group, it froze in mid-air without a spill of its content. Yep. You guessed it, shit is about to get a little more interesting around here. My immediate response was, "Holy crap." It baffled me as I stared at the frozen mug for about 5 seconds with my arm still stretched out before it continued its motion and fell to the ground, but without a dent on it. My milk spilled and the ground needed cleaning, but I wasn't paying attention to that. Comment. The only thought in my head right now is, just when I thought things couldn't get any more exciting, something as exhilarating as this happens.